It looked like it might just go right past him.
Yeah.
If he comes back in, you might hear something he's heard before. Tom Hadley watched his 11-year-old son stagger toward the summit of the Grand Teton. Ben's legs quivered as he followed his father's footprints across the final patch of snow, and after every fourth step, he stopped to lean on his ice axe. The eyes that looked over the tops of his glacier glasses were glazed, and he leaned so far into the wind that when it lulled, he nearly pitched over sideways. For once, Tom knew his son's struggle was real. More than 20 years as a mountaineer had taught him the difference between someone who is at his physical limit and someone who merely thinks he is. Ben came even with his father a few yards before the summit, and Tom offered a water bottle. Ben stared at it with a look of profound nausea. "I'm good." The boy's trembling voice gave the lie to his attempt at machismo. "Get a few sips in you," Tom insisted. "Best thing for the altitude." Ben grimaced as he forced down a swallow. Tom swept one arm toward the summit, just 24 easy steps away. "Why don't you take it from here?" In his guiding days, Tom had led nearly 1,000 clients to this summit. When conditions permitted, he always let the neophytes lead the last few steps. And today's sky held no hint of the afternoon thunderstorms that could turn the peak into a death trap. The trip up the Exum Ridge with Ben had been slow, but the June light would give more than enough time to descend to their camp on the lower saddle. And this early in the season, there were few parties on the mountain, so they would have the summit of the Grand to themselves and the time to enjoy it. But in the awkward tangle of their relationship, enjoying the summit together was likely to be the crux of the climb. Ben lowered his head and plodded toward the summit with the grim determination he had shown since they left the trailhead the day before. Tom had not brought his son into the Tetons to toughen him up. He had more important things to communicate here. But he couldn't help liking this unexpected fire in his frail mama's boy. Ben's birth had been the final nail that fastened the coffin lid over Tom's career as a guide and serious climber. Now that he was back in Wyoming, trying to rebuild that lost life as a climbing ranger in Grand Teton National Park, Tom wanted to put the failures of the intervening years behind him, which mostly meant connecting with the timid, distant child who, like everything else during the years he had tried to live Allison's way, had always baffled and frustrated Tom. Allison had relented on the custody arrangement to give him Ben for the summer, so now he had his chance. With no idea how to begin, he had done what he always did when life overwhelmed him, headed for the mountains and hoped for the best. Tom came up behind Ben and laid a hand on his shoulder as the boy stood on the summit platform, staring northeast toward Mount Owen and Tiwanaw. They stood there for a long time, slowly rotating to take in the sweep of the land below them. Tom meant to point out each peak of the Tetons and the contours of the Snake River Valley, as well as the Gros Ventre, Sorca, Wind River, and Wyoming ranges east of them, and the Sawtooth and Big Hole ranges to the west, the aching sprawl of sunshine and shadow that mapped his interior life. He had already pointed to Gannett Peak and the Wind Rivers and turned to Ben to begin his father-guide routine, but stopped when he looked at his son. Ben stared at the land spread below him with an expression so odd he seemed to have forgotten to breathe. It felt like the moment in a fairy tale when the child discovers that the magical world he had always hoped for actually exists. As he looked into Ben's face, Tom realized he had been wrong about this spread of land and light. It wasn't his inner map, at least not today. It was Ben's. Tom doubted the actual world around Ben had ever aligned so closely with the way the boy saw things.